This is Coda Radio, episode 43 for April 1st, 2013. You're listening to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode's brought to you by our outrageously fine sponsor, GoDaddy.com. I'll tell you more about them as the show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single dang week is our host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Good morning, Chris.
In the afternoon to you, sir. And how are you doing over there on the East Coast?
I'm having fun. As usual, they're tearing up my road right outside my house.
And you got to be honest with the live stream and with the listeners at home. You're not a huge fan of the shenanigans of the April 1st, are you?
No. So my clients are tremendous trolls. They like to send me things like, they retroactively rejected the app from the store. All kinds of wonderful stuff.
Always on April 1st?
Always on April 1st. Every year, someone's got to be clever.
And you just sit there and you look at them and say, "You look it. I'm all about
business." Exact. Damn it.
You know what's really great about that
business
is when I listen to it in playback afterwards, you can't even tell if it's really you or not. Like when I hear it now, it's obviously from the soundboard. But when you hear it in the actual playback, it kind of sounds like it's you. So they don't know.
Oh no.
I might just drop that in from time to time. Just saying. All right, so I've been lightly teased during the pre-show, but I don't actually know what the main topic is today. What are we talking about?
We are talking about JavaPlay, something I teased a month and a half ago.
Oh yeah. You've been mentioning it here in little breadcrumbs as we've gone along.
Yes. So we won't jump into that directly. We do have some feedback.
Yeah, why don't we start? We have I think we have a good cross section of stuff today. Hopefully some of this stuff will be applicable to everybody. So why don't we start with Philip's email. You ready?
Do it.
All right. So he says, "Hi guys, I love the show, but I have a question, which you've probably heard 1,000, maybe even 1,000,000 times. I want to get started in programming. I have already done some really basic things, and I really want to get my hands dirty with code. What's the best way? How could I join an open source project? Which language should I use? Currently, he's trying C++. Thanks for your response, Philip." So he's got basically several questions. Where should he start? Should he start with an open source project? And if he does, how should he get into it? And which language should he start? Which sounds like maybe that language question might be answered by the previous question.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd say use our promo code for codeschool.com.
Yeah, so we have talked about Code School. It's been a little while, and if you go to the bottom of Jupiter Broadcasting, you can click on the Code School link down there. And that's good because that's actually code by doing, and it's really well done. So we both like that, and we've seen quite a bit of people that tune into the show that have used this. So this would be one way to get started. And I would figure a lot of web-based projects, you're getting a lot of the stuff you want here.
Yeah. So, but to your other questions, there isn't a best way, right? I like Code School. I use it a lot, but I'm also a big book person. How do you join an open source project? It depends on the project. Again. And we've talked about this before, Chris, so I think we should just go through it quickly. The thing I always recommend is just find something you want to develop and do it. Right? Whatever language is appropriate for that, use that language.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a web app, it's obviously JavaScript. If it's a Mac app, it's Objective-C. And I would just go that route because, honestly, you're going to have to know more than one language. You're eventually going to have to change languages from time to time.
Right, absolutely. Good point.
You don't want to be a one-trick pony. So I wouldn't be hung up. Now, obviously, certain options are going to be tough depending on the hardware you already have.
I think where that question comes from, because the reason why I would ask you which language is if I really am not very sturdy in anything and I want to sort of be eased into it, like I'm like tiptoeing into the water. I don't want to be like, thrown to the deep end and really have to get into something complex. I think that's the source of that question.
Right. And again, I would say, Java's a great language because you can do a lot with it. And it's relatively simple Certainly compared to C++, which you say you're currently using, Philip. And I don't mean to sound like I don't believe you. I'm just saying if you're already doing C++, picking up Java shouldn't be hard. And it really depends. I kind of think there's a lot of, right now with all these app stores, there's a lot of opportunity to just have an idea and make an app, right? And get it out there and get some feedback and see what you did wrong or what you did right and all of that. If people in the chat room are trolling you, telling you to learn C or assembly, really, I wouldn't do that. But yeah.
That's great advice. And I think to go back to your first point you made, and this is how I've anything that is huge that I've learned it's been because I'm scratching a personal itch, I'm solving a personal problem, I'm reaching a personal goal that is, and learning everything between here and there is the ends to the means and not the means itself. If I had to just take on learning something just for learning something, I can do that, but I can only commit myself so far to that. There's just only so much, because it almost falls into the hobby category at that point. And that's fine, but you're only going to get so far.
One thing I just want to, because the chat room is getting a little wacky.
Yeah, man, they're going crazy.
Really, if you're starting out, it's really important, I can't talk today, to avoid the religious wars around different platforms and different languages. Because what's going to happen is when you're at such a beginner level, if you're a Microsoft guy and you tell me that everything open source is crap, because somebody told you that, I'm going to think you're an idiot, right? I mean, that's the truth. And vice versa, if you're an open source guy and you tell me, well, that's bad because it's, proprietary. It's the same thing. You definitely want to have an open mind and figure out something you need to do and pick the right tool for the job.
There you go.
And yeah.
All right, let's move to Mac's question. Mac is in Sweden with questions. He says, "Hi, Mike and Chris. I'm relatively a new listener to Coda Radio, and I'm currently working through the back catalog of old episodes. Awesome stuff. So thanks for the great show." Which I think is so funny because when you listen backwards, you sort of listen to us de-evolve our style. I have a question about approaching companies with security flaws. I know, right? This is something as a contractor that it has been something I've struggled with. Say I find a SQL injection on their website that could potentially expose private data in their database. Should I want to get I would want to do the right thing and report this bug to them. However, I feel that I should be compensated for finding it. This probably makes me sound like a douche, but I'd be providing a pretty important service to them. And as a student, I kind of need the money. Would be great to hear your opinions on this. Sweden says hi.
So I'm going to dodge this question and say I am not a lawyer.
Yeah, for sure, right? I mean, don't take our legal advice.
My layman's thought would be you are dangerously close to the realm of extortion. And
let me throw this out there. At you.
Right.
So, as a contractor, the company that I worked for would approach a company and say, "Hi, we are XYZ IT consulting services, and we would like to do a free audit of your network for you, and then we will provide you with the report afterwards." And then they would bring me in, and they'd sign off on the appropriate stuff. Now that's key, but I'll continue on.
That's the difference, right? You get an indemnity and all of that.
Right. But then you sit down and you basically give them a report that scares the hell out of them to get them to hire you, then to fix it. There might be some sort of, maybe, Mac, you could just do some sort of offer. The problem is, you're kind of already too far, is kind of where I'm at. But what I would say is if you could write them up some sort of report and say, I believe you may be susceptible to this issue. I could prove it by trying it, documenting it, and providing you the results if you want to hire me as a contractor for X amount of hours. Say it's going to cost me 4 hours.
Yeah, I would direct this question towards Alan, since I know he has some experience with this sort of thing.
We actually kind of kicked one just like this around on TechSnap last week, and essentially we looked at it. So this was the one we kicked around on TechSnap was about a university student who wanted to report it to his own university and didn't want the school to come down on him. And there's not really a clear way to do this for either situation.
So I am not, by day a security consultant, right? I really don't do this sort of thing. And Grey Wolf actually has a great point for you in the chat. Look for open bug bounties because they usually come attached with some sort of indemnity where they won't have you arrested. you really, I mean, let's be fair. A lot of sites right now are open to SQL injection
Right.
attacks.
This seems like
And
maybe though he was just, he's
yeah,
there. He's like, I wonder. He tries it. Oh crap! It is like this.
but the problem is, again, not giving you legal advice, but in Christic's example, they had to sign a paper that said they weren't,
Yeah. Yeah.
that they were waiving liability.
Right.
You really can't do this the way you want to do it. And that, I mean, it may work once or twice, but the problem is all the person has to do is pick up the phone to your local federal police force, whatever it is in Sweden.
Yeah.
And say, yeah.
I don't know what the temperature is like in Sweden, but here in the U.S.,
you would be plea bargaining.
it would be bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you withheld, but so what you might do is you might just have to, in this circumstance, is just say, here it is. I'm letting you know about it. My consulting fee is $85, $200, $1 an hour, whatever you want to charge, and send that along to them and say, if you would like to pay me for that time, you can, but I'm disclosing this to you. I mean, that seems like maybe your safest option, maybe?
Even then, you've already attacked their network with no sort of protection.
Yeah.
So you really can't do this. And there are people who do this.
See, what's awful is you do need something, though, because we need to there's so many of these types of vulnerabilities that you just can't cut off. You can't scare people away from telling people.
Don't want to know about the vulnerability because it's one thing to be negligent. It's another thing to know about it and be willfully negligent from their point of view. Right? It's a cost benefit thing.
Right.
If you don't know about a security flaw, you need a lawyer, basically. You can't do this without some kind of legal contract. Because there's so many. So there are reasons that Sony denied all the flaws in their system, right? Because if they said, yeah, we knew about it, but it would cost us a couple $1 million to fix, so we just let your credit cards leak, they would be in court for the remainder of that company's existence.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone with a PSN account would sue them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure Chris can tell you from his own experience, sometimes companies are willing to deal with the occasional security breach just to save money.
Oh, yeah. I would say that's usually the default position of companies, despite what they might say publicly.
Yeah, and in fact, if you think about it from a development point of view, it's why we still have Java applets running around. It's cheaper to deal with the risk than to actually build a new app.
Yeah, this is a problem, that is just essentially the way corporate bureaucracy works is because of all of the internal risk and fault is deferred, that they can actually assume a position of, well, as long as we legally protect ourselves, that's really all that matters. And that's what you end up having. And the problem is, and I see what I really feel bad about is we need guys out there telling people about their vulnerabilities, about these problems, so that way they can get fixed. That way we, the customers, are protected. But because the way the system is set up, he's actually exposing himself to legal risk by informing them.
And if the person you call is clever, they're just going to say, well, how about this? You tell me, you fix it, or I'm reporting you to the authorities.
That's why I think if he's going to tell them, he's either got to do it anonymously, which is very risky and stupid, or he has to be completely transparent and say, here's the problem, here's a possible solution, here's why I found it, if that's legit, and, here's my rate if you want to even do that. I don't know.
And I would also add for some security firms, there are types of certifications and registries, and
maybe this is depending, I don't know what his relationship is with them. But, maybe this is a foot in the door that says, hey, I found this. You want me to do some more auditing? I mean, maybe, Mac, you can go out there and say, look, I found this for you. You want me to check the rest of your network? I'll charge you this rate, but here's this, and I'll fix it. Here's the fix and all that.
Yeah, I would avoid whatever the equivalent federal prison in Sweden is if I were you.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our next question, okay?
All right, let's do it.
Comes from Mike, and he's got a question that he says is...
It's negative in the freedom dimension.
But,
so actually, Chris, we talked about this last week.
Oh, we did? Bin press?
Yeah, bin press.
Okay.
Let's just do a quick overview. You can buy and sell code modules.
Yeah, all right. So, we did cover this, and you were okay with it. All right.
I'm okay with the idea. I've never used it, and I would question the quality of the code modules.
Did I get to play that clip last week?
I don't think you did. I think we just ran through it.
Then that's pretty much all that matters. So I guess problem solved.
All right, let's jump on to motivation.
All right, lacking motivation to code. Tony writes in, he says, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can't find the motivation to write code these days. A few years ago, I still kept writing code daily and created several hobby projects for only myself. I used to like programming for network library, and again, I love to make it better. Now, he goes on to say, he kind of has a long email here, but he goes on to say that I can't find the motivation to start writing code for projects anymore. Even though I know it would take only about 2 weeks to complete both, these 2 projects actually would be used and I would get a little bit of cash from them. He said, I've also lost interest in keeping up with new software technology. Oh, this is interesting. Like all of those new JavaScript libraries. So he's kind of fading a little bit, even in the interest to follow the news.
Fair. There are so many JavaScript libraries released in any given week these days that really.
Says the problem is I should be starting to take programming and projects more seriously currently, as not to just be a hobby anymore. If you have any tips on how I could enjoy programming again, I'd love to hear them. Thanks, Tony. That's got to be a problem people go through, right?
Yeah, it's a problem I went through some years ago. My solution is to totally switch development stacks. That can be annoying and rather frustrating. But, it's interesting. So you've done PHP. Are you still interested in web development? Perhaps like a Ruby or a Python would be interesting to you. Or maybe you don't want to be on the web. Maybe you want a more rich client. So some sort of mobile device or desktop development.
Well, the taking the break concept, like you're saying, and like Pythoneer in the chat room is saying, so the Linux Action Show, you know what that is? That's a lot of Linux all the time for 7 years. Linux every single day, Linux news, Linux questions, all Linux. And I started for a while to get a little burned out on it. I was just getting a little tired. And then, one of the actually benefits of contracting is I go out in the field and I sit down for a month and I'm administering a Windows server, or I'm working at an editing shop that's using all Macs. And it would always remind me what it was that I liked about Linux originally. And
Wait, so you're saying the Macs help you tolerate Linux? Is that...
And Windows Server. It's like, because what happens is...
Hang on. So we need a sound clip here.
Okay. Which sound clip would that be?
Say, I like Windows and Mac. They help me tolerate Linux.
I like Windows and Mac because they help me tolerate Linux.
Glorious.
No, here's what it is when you're really close up to something and you're smushed up against it and you start to really see all of the things about it that really bug you. Like, oh man, another project fork that's just wasting resources. Oh, GNOME 3's getting rebooted and now it looks like crap. That's horrible. All these things that are really kind of just sort of drag on you after a while that start to get, you kind of down. And so when you do go live in another world for a little while, you are at first exposed to all of the things that are great about that. All of the things that really make that new system sing, and you can really get into it and you can say, gosh, man, yeah, that old thing is so silly. And then after you spend a little bit of time with that new thing, start to go, gosh, I wish it did this, or I wish it didn't have this problem. I wish they had this available. I wish I could read about this. And you start to understand that some of those original things that I originally came to understand and appreciate are still there. And you just kind of have to balance things out. I think it's hard for us to find that balance, but by taking a break, by looking at other things, like in this case, another language, it sort of refreshes your palate, as it were. And then, of course, Snake Dog in the chat room says the problem is I'm just using Ubuntu. If I used a real distro like Fedora, I wouldn't have that problem. Well, and to be clear, I've never really have, thanks to keeping exposed with the other. And some people might say that makes me, in some degree, too much of a generalist, and I say maybe the equivalent here would be, you experiment with other languages a lot, and you're not just solely focusing on one language. But like Mr. Dominic just said in the previous question, the industry changes, things pivot, and, eventually you're going to be that guy who dove 100% to XNA, and you're all about XNA development, and then where are you at today, right?
Yeah, that's not great.
So I wouldn't get too hung up on having to be totally married to a single language or a single platform.
I mean, I definitely go through this sometimes, to a less degree, right? Because, you said you did PHP, so you're probably solving a lot of the same problems in a lot of the same ways. And it can get boring, especially if you're contracting and you have to explain these problems to different people, and it's really the same thing, right?
Yeah, boy, tell me about that. It is such a drag after a while.
Yeah, I mean, if bandwidth is bad, it's going to be a little slow. Like, there's always that stuff.
Yeah.
My favorite is, if they're on AT&T, it's not going to work. What do you want from me?
You know what I've literally had to deal with is a client who rewrote their whole web stack, their whole front web stack, the whole thing to be iPad compatible and iOS compatible because they had they have this, huge influx in the industry that they're in of people on iOS devices. And then it started to become Android devices. So then they started, writing some of it to work on like Dolphin browser and Chrome on Android. And they've been doing this for 2 years almost.
Oh my God.
I know. And they just last week got their first iPhone in-house to test on.
Glorious. I love it.
And it's my wife's used one because they didn't have anything and they needed to test it something right away because a big client was having a problem with the site that's been deployed and is in production now. This client has an issue with the site and they hadn't yet tried it on an iPhone 4. So I went and got my wife's old iPhone 4 that we had in a drawer and I brought it into them. So, I mean, there are certain things in this industry that will make you so worn out after you've experienced them for 15 years in a row. And I totally can understand that. And the only way you can get away from that, the only way is to take a break and be okay with being a little burned out because it's completely natural. It's part of the organic process of your interest. Stop stressing about being burned out because you're just prolonging it. Just accept it, be zen about it, and find something else that interests you. You'll come back to it eventually.
Yeah, I would always say at least one facet of this that I get is I do a lot of client-side development. And, there's a lot of little subjective things in there that get really annoying. So, if you're a PHP dev, maybe you're getting frustrated dealing with DBAs who are giving you a hard time. Go client-side and deal with designers, and then you'll love those DBAs.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I love designers. We had a whole episode about how you should not be jerks to them, but
that's right. We did. That's right.
There is a grass is always greener, and actually, that does segue into our real topic this week.
Oh, very nice. All right. Well, let's pause right there so we can thank this week's sponsor before we jump into that, and that is GoDaddy.com. Now, I have actually a pretty close personal text messaging relationship with Danica Patrick, and she hadn't been watching Coda Radio, so I sent her last night a little suggestion to watch Coda Radio, but she still got us a great deal. Now listen, if you're trying something up like a demo, maybe you want to set something up really quick, maybe you want to buy a domain for somebody, or maybe you've got just a great April Fool's idea, use our code CODER295 when you check out over at GoDaddy.com, and you get your .com for $2.95. Also, you can now use that code, CODER295, to transfer domains. So if you're bringing domains over to the GoDaddy, because one of the great things about GoDaddy is their management system and the way you can delegate controls to other people on your team, other clients, other people, whatever. I mean, I love this. Like, for example, the jblive.tv domain and a lot of the ancillary domains around Jupiter Broadcasting are all in a folder in my GoDaddy account that Alan has access to. So that way, as Scale Engine needs to move things around or scale, as it were, he just goes in there into his GoDaddy account. He doesn't have to log into my GoDaddy account. He logs into his own personal account where I have delegated his account access to my domains. And then he can manage them as fit. I don't have to worry about them. And if forever, at any point, I needed to change that relationship, I simply move those domains out of the folder in my management panel, and it's all taken care of. That's why I love GoDaddy. So transfer your domains over there. Use the code CODER295 when you check out. Get that .com for $2.95, or get that transfer for $2.95. And thank you to GoDaddy for the support of the Coda Radio program. All right, Mr. Dominic, what is the topic? It's JavaPlay, right?
JavaPlay. Now, I've teased this for months, and I've, of course, failed to deliver on an episode, as is my nature.
Well, that's okay. I don't mind as long as it's like a slow burn, like The Sopranos. Right. I kind of like that.
So I have been doing some work in JavaPlay, and I'm afraid to say that I had to not use JavaPlay.
Oh.
But let's start with the positive.
Okay.
JavaPlay is, as you might guess, a Java/Scala based framework that is an MVC Ruby on Rails style web application framework. So my use for it would obviously be the back end for something else, right?
Okay.
It is really cool. If you use IntelliJ, there's some great tooling that does a lot of just configuration stuff for you. If you're familiar with convention over configuration, it's like that, but it does have a little bit of the Java legacy of XML being involved. And it is just called Play Framework now, but I still call it JavaPlay apparently because I'm an old man.
That's okay. I don't mind. I kind of like it.
So development-wise, if you like Java, you're going to like this. Think about Java without all the EE crap. and you're pretty much there. Now, here's the problem. I like me a nice git push Heroku workflow. And Heroku proudly displays support for JavaPlay.
Okay.
Except the current version of JavaPlay is 2.1, and they support version 1.2.
Ouch.
Some of their docs are for version 2.04. And some of the other functionality just doesn't seem to work.
So this is this a result of the JavaPlay framework moving too quick?
No, I don't think it's JavaPlay's fault.
Okay.
So Heroku is a little tricky. For free, all right, so let's start. JavaPlay comes in with a nice built-in database called H2. That's a pure Java database. And it it can run in in-memory mode for development, and it's a SQL database. You can also run it on disk. Now, Heroku, by default, and if you're on a free account, forces Postgres. Well, JavaPlay and Postgres don't, by default, work nice together. For instance, JavaPlay lets you do things that work fine on H2, and it only checks against H2, but will make Postgres get into a state where unless you're a DBA, you're going to have a hell of a time doing the migrations, which in JavaPlay are called evolutions, but they're migrations if you've done .NET or Rails.
And this sounds like something that you end up getting marred down in, that you really would rather spend your time working on your project.
So here's the problem.
Okay.
I got into a state where it had blown up the migration so much that I could have called a DBA friend to write some SQL to fix it, sure. But there was just a lot of weird things every time you would push to Heroku. And in particular around Postgres, it would sometimes not find the connection, sometimes it would. And the way Play works is there's just a .config file. So there's no change there. And I did some Googling. Now, I've been playing with this for a few months now.
Okay.
And it turns out that, it works at Heroku, but Heroku's really not not Heroku. Postgres is really not a first-class citizen. But the way Heroku has their plan structured, Postgres is a first-class citizen there.
Right.
Now, if you were willing to pay for the MongoDB add-on, you'd probably have a much cleaner experience than I did. But I'm not quite ready to jump on that NoSQL train. And one thing that's incredibly frustrating is the Heroku documentation that you just brought up is the wrong freaking version.
Yeah.
And is incorrect
Yeah.
to download anything that's from the last 6 months.
I'm looking at the timestamp, and some of their stuff, not just that, but a lot of the stuff on their site was updated last year.
And that's what the problem is. And I've used Heroku for Rails a lot, and the Rails stuff is impeccable. And the only sense I can get is that they were a Rails first company.
So if you were not doing it on the Heroku platform.
So that's where my second issue comes in. I said, okay, so I don't need Heroku, right?
Okay, yeah.
I said, let's find, I don't want to host this myself because that's just a lot of admin work I don't want to do.
Right.
Let's find a competitor to Heroku that really focuses on this, that has the same kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't any. At least none that I found. Chat room, if you know of any, please email the show. None that I found.
And how critical do you think the ability to integrate with these services is? Like, is the primary requirement
me, it's absolutely critical.
All right, so that's the main thing. You don't want to have to build a server. You don't want to have to do any of that stuff.
Right. It's a total deal breaker for me.
Okay.
The closest acceptable solution I'm just not doing well today. I found was, doing the old school, I'm going to spin up a server with the H2 database on it, and because that works seamlessly.
See, I feel like that proposition doesn't sound like a big deal to probably the majority of our audience. I don't know, actually, maybe not, that's not true, but at least a big portion of our audience. And I would say, I think, though, it probably reflects the market, though. Like, I think you've seen the market has responded that when you make, a one-click, two-click deployments of virtual systems or other systems, like, then it really explodes in usage. So that does seem like it'd be pretty critical to the adoption.
In the past, I would have gone to Linode or SixSync or something like that, or GoDaddy, and bought 2 VPSs. And
it allows for that impulse deployment almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Now my thing is I have to maintain a server and worry about if something weird happens or some kind of security vulnerability in Linux or something else that came pre-installed in the
Well,
server.
I think it's more than that too. It's about the fact that your time is valuable and you have X amount of time to work on the project itself and not X amount of time to be a server admin.
Exactly. And yes, as Nick Doc talking, there are all kinds of hacks people are using online for H2 to get around this. But I don't want a hack, right?
Yeah.
I want something.
Yeah.
So it's a little strange to say, but Azure, if I was to go a more infrastructure route rather than platform as a service, it was a better choice. It's very strange, right? Because if you think about it, Heroku's the big non-Windows one.
Yeah.
And they proudly display support for all these other frameworks, Django, Java, PHP, the whole bit.
Right.
And I've only ever really used them at Rails before, and it's always been seamless. It's always been, if you set up your config file, git push, you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
This was just a disaster. Like they default to Java 1.6, and they don't read which version you've used in your config file. You have to separately go into Heroku and change it.
It's like they just really didn't put any effort into implementing this.
It feels like they wanted to have a line that say, "Oh, we support Java devs too."
Right.
Now, to be fair, having done this kind of crappy Java work before, there's a whole lot of crappy XML configuration that they're saving you compared to other Java frameworks, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm thinking in particular of Java EE. But still, I guess I'm spoiled. I guess that's really what it comes down to. Because Heroku at Rails, git push, done.
And that's been a huge reason why Rails has exploded.
Right. And this was git push. Oh, wait, it looks like you're using something not available in Java 6. We're sorry. Or git push. You didn't really, you didn't use some little configuration. To be fair, these problems aren't insurmountable, right?
Well,
if I wanted to.
I mean, say they came in. No, say Heroku came out with a press release next month that said, we've doubled down on JavaPlay and we've made all of this stuff really smooth. And if you select this option, everything will just work. And it becomes really slick. Does that change the game significantly? Does that change the situation?
I mean, I wasted. So I got, and I know this is going to sound trolly to the JV audience, but I was able in 2 days rewriting the code I had written on Azure and in ASP.NET MVC4 to get to where I was in a month with JavaPlay. Not because of JavaPlay, because of having to fight with Heroku to do the evolution/migrations. Now that could be
pretty significant.
Yeah. Now that's because I'm not I'm not great at writing raw SQL. And it's also because we also need to understand that Heroku Postgres isn't like you have Postgres on a server somewhere and you can do whatever you want. There are restrictions and there are things you can and can't do. My whole point here is that it's very unnecessary to have these problems in 2013.
Right.
Right. I shouldn't care. If the migrations worked locally, they should work remotely. Right? If you're going to support a platform that's default database isn't Postgres, and you can tell that I'm using that platform, don't default Postgres. And I like Postgres, but all my Rails stuff uses Postgres. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Or say, wait, it looks like you wrote part of this using H2. Be careful. Because what's really interesting is the first few migrations were valid. And then they weren't. And there's no easy way to, you can't like SSH into Heroku.
Right.
You can't be like, let's just blow this out. You can blow out the instance and start again, sure. But it was just a really, and I don't want to come down too hard because JavaPlay was actually a dream. It was really good.
Well, it kind of sounds like the Heroku deployment situation has soured the milk a little bit because otherwise, so now here's the interesting thing you said. You said that you were able to rebuild it for Azure and all of that within, just a matter of days. Is there a functionality difference? And if not, why use JavaPlay?
I did a lot of the skunkworks stuff in Java, right? So some of the model should look like this instead, or let's change these controllers around a bit. So I had the structure already done. So I just had to kind of port that code to C#. And the way Azure does migration, so a benefit to Microsoft here is that they have control of both ends, right? developing in their language on their platform with their tools. You're deploying to their server with their tools.
Huge benefit, really.
Right. So they can just say, they can say your migration worked in Visual Studio, it works on Azure, done.
So the question then I would ask you is why bother JavaPlay? What am I missing?
So I wanted to use JavaPlay because a few months ago I talked about why I didn't go to Azure originally. Because if I ever wanted to move off of one of these push deployment services, licensing fees for Windows Server and SQL Server or MS SQL Server are significant, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I didn't want to go with Rails because I wanted to do something else, and I kind of prefer statically typed languages.
Mm.
And I just wanted to do something a little different. I mean, it's basically it's boredom, actually, as our emailer wrote in. I really didn't want to write Rails.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done some Java in the past, and I'd kind of like to get into Java because I feel like I beat up on Java developers a lot. But this is not the way, and this is not the fault of the Play community. They're doing an awesome job. But really, I think if you're gonna advertise that something works on your platform, don't have mismatched docs, right? Or don't use defaults that are convenient for your other platform.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, that's why Postgres is the default, because it's super convenient for most Rails developers.
Yeah.
I mean, even though Rails will actually, depending on your configuration, default to something else, it's really easy to change it. And I'm just wondering, like, the Java community hasn't come up with one of their own services like this, or I haven't found it. But I did some hard looking.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think, that is interesting because it wasn't the Rails community, though, that created Heroku, right? It was Heroku came along and helped productize it.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to do that with JavaPlay, but it's just, they're not calling it JavaPlay anymore, right? It's just Play Framework. What did they change the name to? It's not JavaPlay.
It's Play Framework now.
Play Framework. I mean, how long has Heroku been doing this? Maybe this is just their first attempt, and maybe they'll productize it like they did a Rails deployment. You need some competition.
They've been advertising it for almost a year now.
So you need somebody else to come along and show them how to do it right. Right? That's what the problem is there's not really anybody else.
I see a new business vector for Scale Engine.
There you go. You just got to sit Alan down. What you ought to do is fly out to Canada and have dinner with Alan. Although I hear it snows up there, so you better be careful. You never know.
Yeah, but no, it's a really strange situation. And before I get 20 emails asking the question, I'll answer directly. Yes, I did move it to Azure. And I did rewrite it in C# and ASP.NET.
I'm sorry. What?
Are you okay? Do you need to wipe that up?
I'll just I'll let it sit there for a bit.
Oh, good. I hope it doesn't smell.
And that's been fine. I mean, I guess I don't really mean to give you a hard time. If that's what's working for you, what's wrong? There's nothing wrong with that.
It's been magical, and I mean, there's certainly a lot of black magic going on there. Yeah, it's like My Little Pony of frameworks.
Now, I feel like this is a route you've been down already, and it didn't work out for you.
It didn't work out for a technical reason. I got scared away by what would this cost at, Twitter scale.
Right.
The Twitter scale is probably not realistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for a back end to what may or may not be an iPhone app.
What is the pricing on it? Because is it like EC2? Because that gets shockingly expensive, shockingly fast.
There's a free tier. And they're surprisingly generous, and they have a lot of promotions if you have MSDN or something like that. So this might be shockingly cheap. Yes, you did hear My Little Pony of frameworks.
What?
I consider ASP.NET MVC4 the My Little Pony of web frameworks.
Oh,
yes.
Man. Leave it to Microsoft. Oh, my gosh.
No, I mean that in a good way. It's magical.
I know. I'm looking at their pricing calculator. So I slide the thing.
Yep.
Okay, I want a 20 gigabyte database, and I want to use a terabyte a month of bandwidth. Let me dial that in right here. And you have this little slider here. Oh, I even include how much support I want. Well, I want developer level, standard level, or professional direct. Let's go standard.
Well, the support's where they're killing, right?
$485 a month to have a 20 gigabyte database, a terabyte of transfer, and standard support.
That's weighted heavily towards support. Now, let's be fair, though. Heroku would be just expensive or very close. the key with these services is not to store your large amounts of data in their database. So only store the plain text. And then you offload any kind of media to not EC2, I'm sorry, S3 or Cloud Bucket or Cloud whatever that Rackspace sells.
Scale Engine.
Or Scale Engine does it for you, and you get a CDN. Yeah.
So,
That's
okay.
the trick. So really, you're unlikely to be talking about gigs of data if you're just saving text and keys.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, you're absolutely right. But if you did a traditional development cycle where you save everything in one database, you are going to pay a lot. But that would be the same with Heroku or Cloud9 or any of these other more developer-oriented services.
I do kind of get a sick pleasure from the idea of going to Microsoft, going to Azure, and firing up a nice big Azure Linux server.
Hey, they are more than happy to run your Ubuntu for you.
Yeah, apparently. I'm looking at this. This is so funny.
Your money's green either way.
Yeah. I can look, they have Linux machines in XL, medium, large, and extra small. That is adorable. That is adorable.
See, Chris, that's where the sysadmin developer thing comes into play. I don't want to know.
I know, this really is putting me out of a job. This totally puts me out of a job, 100%. I mean, you take complicated server concepts and you melt them down to small, medium, and large. That's where I make my money.
Well, let's be fair though, right? So the service you're looking at is not the service I'm using.
No, but I could see clients I could see eventually this is the way of the future. This is why I got to do podcasts for a living. I'm screwed. I'm a dying breed, man.
No, I don't think so. Because this is, I mean, if you're looking to do a real like virtualized instance, this is a lot more expensive than even buying a server
today. But maybe in another 5 years, maybe it's half the price, and then I'm really screwed. I mean, right now, if I had a Linux box here, let me see. So if I'll put it up to a terabyte or so, and I'm gonna need some storage. 26 gigs ought to be enough. I'm gonna have a medium-sized server. With I don't really, since it's going to be for me, I'll just do developer support. Holy crap! All right, well that's $2,600 a month. But if they got that down to $200 a month, that's cheaper than me. Just saying. This, I don't know, man. I think people in my industry are limited in their time because this is only Microsoft. Google's doing the same thing. Amazon's doing the same thing. Heroku. I'm screwed.
I don't think you're screwed. I mean,
and you're helping bringing in my doom by using these services. You are
no,
I'm
not using that service, right? That's the difference.
Okay, all right, I forgive. 26 terabytes? Is that what I chose? Oh, no wonder why it's so much money. Oh, sorry, chat room. I meant 26 gigs, not terabytes. All right.
It's your hippie Linux bias again.
So tell me about this. So what service are you using then?
I think they call it websites or...
Okay, yeah, I see that. Yep, I see websites on here, yeah. And you did free?
Free, yeah.
And so you don't have any database?
Also free.
Oh, I see. Yeah, run up to 10 websites for free. Seamlessly upgrade to a paid shared multi-tenant or reserved instance model as your traffic grows. Oh, so that's nice too. So you throw it up there for free, 100% free, and then if you start to take off, you just turn it up as you go.
Exactly.
Man, I'm so screwed.
And you can like suspend it and pause it, and yeah.
Oh my gosh! No wonder why we've seen the story floating around today that Linus Torvalds is taking a job at Microsoft. He sees the way it's going too, man.
No, he's not.
Yeah, dude, it's right here. Don't you see it on the stream? Linus Torvalds to join head.
Oh,
he's going to head the Windows 9 project. Didn't you hear about this? Just breaking. Yeah.
I'm not acknowledging that.
Good. I don't want to go down that route. We could open that can of worms. Well, that's interesting. So are you going to leave it on Azure? For real?
I think I am, because I did a little bit of mental math.
Mm-hmm.
At the point where it cost me any significant amount of money, I should have made more money than that by a good margin.
Ah, that's the important factor. So your infrastructure
and
costs
if
won't
it's
exceed.
a total flop, I will have spent no money.
Well, that's a good deal they got going there. I like that.
I mean, let's be honest, Microsoft has the money. That's why they're so generous, right?
Yeah, they can buy into that.
Yeah.
I wonder though if we won't see that help with the adoption of their platform, because that is a pretty nice system, and if you just ran into a serious deployment problem with an alternative and your answer was to turn to .NET and turn to Azure, and you ended up being able to develop, reach your end goal fairly quickly. I can't imagine that's going to be an isolated incident, right? I mean, do you think this is maybe a turning point?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If it's easy to develop and deploy this, it's going to be very tempting to just keep doing that.
Are they creating the VB6 of the web world? I mean, are they making something where it's so easy to develop that the barrier of entry is so low that every average Joe who wants to learn programming can do it?
I don't think so. So this is still C#, right? This is still the equivalent of Rails. Now, if you think Rails is VB of the web, then okay, but it's not going to. This is not going to be something where Dylan can pick it up and be like, I have what was that? Google App Inventor that was a little drag and drop thing for Android. This is not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
All this is developing your code as you normally would, but just get pushing it to a hosting solution.
Okay. So it's
That's
still
all
in its
this.
core.
This is Heroku, right? This is just like Heroku.
Yeah. Seems like, though, there would be a future where it's totally fully integrated in with Visual Studio, and it's like one button push from your development from your IDE to Azure or something like that.
So you can do that.
Oh, really?
That. You can download a little certificate and it does it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty wild, man. I mean, that lets some kid who gets a educational copy of Visual Studio for free to sit at his house and develop a web app and throw it up on Azure for free.
And how does Heroku prevent some kid doing the same thing with Rails, just with git push?
Microsoft has a pretty strategic advantage when it comes to getting into the schools and things, though, with their software license. They're really generous with like schools. They just give away copies of their stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, you can write a Rails app in Vim.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Right.
This isn't a Microsoft. I don't think it's a poisoning the well thing. I think this is Microsoft was last to this market, right? Rails and Cloud Foundry. VMware is even in there. There's some other company called Something Fog.
I agree with you. It's just, I mean, I'm never the guy in the room who's usually defending Microsoft, but one of the things that I think they've done really well at is super serve to some degree, although this is starting to change, the developer market. They've been, the MSDN, love or hate it. Some people really like that whole MSDN network.
Yeah.
They've got a really good, slick IDE that is well integrated with their services. They just do all of that stuff. I mean, unless I'm wrong, but as far as I know, they tend to do all that stuff pretty much better than anybody else. And, when you have a developer who's got a short amount of time, maybe he's doing, or it's a hobby project that he's doing while he's working, that smooth, butter-like entrance is really, I think, appealing to a lot of people. I'm not saying they're trying. I'm not trying to say they're doing anything nefarious. I mean, they're not trying to poison the well. And they're just executing on one of their strengths, I think.
And they're not the only company who does this. So Xcode is currently free. All the expensive IDEA IDEs are free for any student of any kind or anyone who works on any open source project.
Right, but with Xcode, I sit down and I write up an app and I have to submit it to Apple.
Right.
But with Visual Studio and Azure, I can just deploy it to a web instance for free. I mean, that's a barrier of entry that's just like nothing.
I think you need a credit card, but I'm not sure about that.
All right. Well, yeah, you probably do. But you know what I mean, though. It's like there's no gatekeeper
not really.
to making a web app.
RubyMine, if you just email IntelliJ, or I'm sorry, I keep calling them by their wrong product name. If you just email IDEA, they'll give you RubyMine for free.
That's nice of them.
That's what I'm saying. I think Microsoft gets crap for it, but everybody does it. I mean, I've given versions of CodeJournal away for free for students just because. Mm-hmm. You have to be a high school student, not college.
Yeah, I guess my last point on that is just there's a difference between like that and then like at an organizational level integrating in with the schools and all that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, I understand what you're getting at. I'm just saying, even if Microsoft wasn't in this racket started, and it is a racket, right? I mean, this is literally getting rid of IT.
Hook them while they're young.
Right. How many events have I been to? Let's teach Ruby to young kids. Or let's teach Python to young kids. Why? Because we want them to be just like us. And then I teach them Java, and now I'm not welcome anymore. Sad pain.
I'm here for you, man. I'm here for you.
Yeah, why all the Java hate these days? I mean, yes, sure, it might infect your system.
You gotta admit though, it is really bad. Like, so on TechSnap we just ran a story. One of the big problems is its corporations are not updating Java. So like the vast majority still of Java installations out there are vulnerable. and they're like really vulnerable, and it's bad. And it's like this. There's been this systemic, and I put part of it on Sun and Oracle for the way they've handled updates with that negware update system that they invented. So everybody in the corporations turned it off. Like at my clients, they'd always have, when you deploy Java, we don't want the users installing the Java update because it'll break compatibility. So turn off the update notification. Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off every time. And so they all end up with these old stale versions of Java. And of course, they go out on the web in Internet Explorer under Windows XP, and it's still a massive problem. And it's dragging down the reputation of Java. It's just dragging it down like a rock, like an anchor. Nothing you can do about it. I think its time has passed in the public opinion. You have public blog posts from Twitter and Facebook when they were hacked, pinning it on Java. You have Microsoft and Apple pinning it on Java. These are titans in the industry now that are pinning fault on Java.
But this is like, okay, so let's just slow down the FUD train for a few minutes.
Well, I'm not saying it's necessarily justified entirely, because it's actually malpractice on the part of people using the systems.
Exactly. No one installed the latest version of Java from Oracle. Okay, maybe very few people did. Most of these, quote, Java issues aren't Oracle's problem, right? Or Sun at the time's problem. The fact that you're running Java 6 even today is a problem. And I understand upgrading language versions causes all kinds of issues in your code, but that's part of doing... You know what? This is exactly like the person who wrote in with the security question, right? These companies and organizations would be better off that they just accepted that every year they're going to have to spend money on maintaining code.
Yes.
And updating to the latest version of all their tools.
Yep.
And not try to cling. I mean, it's not a Java thing, right? If you're running old versions of Rails right now, you could be in a lot of trouble. Right? If you're running old versions of ASP, you could be in a lot of trouble. How about, don't even get me started on PHP. MySQL together is like the plague. All of these are, if you don't keep your stuff up to date and configured correctly, it has nothing to do with the tools you're using. I have spoken.
Wise man, wise words.
Yeah, it's just so annoying. People are like, oh, I'm using PHP, so I'm safe. No, you're not. I'm using Rails, so I'm safe. You're not even close to safe.
So you're not saying stop blaming the tool so much as...
There is risk in everything you do if it's connected to the internet.
Yeah, so everything has risk.
And that's why I don't like to host it on my own server and maintain the server, right? That's why I like these Heroku or Azure tools, because some of that risk they take, right?
Well, and I agree. So the counter argument we get all the time is, well, if you host your own server, you own the data, you can secure it yourself. And I always come back and say, yeah, but I don't have time to do that. That's why I don't host JupyterBroadcasting.com, even though I know how to run servers. It's like, that's not my core focus. And I know that is Alan's core focus, and that's what he's going to be better at.
Right. You want someone there to be able to honestly do it for you.
Isn't it the same reason why you put your money in a bank account instead of under your mattress? You have at least a little more faith that the bank is more secure than somebody breaking into your house and robbing your mattress.
All right, Chris, hang on. I mentioned that they have an approved code journal at the beginning of the show, and it's currently in review.
Nice. Okay.
I just got a push notification.
So maybe by the time the episode's out, it'll be...
So go download that.
Which app is what are we talking about? What app would that be, Mr. Dominic?
That would be Code Journal for the Mac.
Code Journal.
No, but I really want to finish this point before we go.
All right.
As much as I love shameless plugs. Also, I have something else I forgot to plug.
Okay, all right. We'll finish your thought, and then we'll do some more plugs.
Running a server under your bed and cuddling it at night does not keep it secure. So if you're afraid of Heroku, I guess the bottom line is like what I'm trying to get at. It's your fault 99.99% of the time, right? It's not Oracle's fault. Yes, Oracle, Microsoft, Apple, all of them could be a little more honest in their disclosures. But if you're running Java 5, you knew what this was. I mean, come on. And that's a soundboard with this was.
You had this coming.
You knew what this was, Java. You knew what you were to me.
Don't lie to yourself. You knew what this was about when we got into it.
I actually wrote an article called Give Duke a Break because someone sent me a nasty email about how I shouldn't recommend anyone use Java because they're going to get, the Black Plague physically from it.
I remember.
I got a little upset.
All right. So, you mentioned you had something you wanted to plug before we get out of here?
Yes. So I have been working on a project called EduFi.
Okay.
And it is, if you are any sort of athlete, it is very interesting for you to kind of hone your game, right? And kind of, in particular for golfers, to get slow-mo action of your swing, to track your progress. And I have to tell you, I do a bit of golfing, and I use this on myself.
Oh, my dad is all about this. My dad is always constantly well, not constantly, but he's always like once a year going in and getting like slow-mo videos done of his golf swing.
Yeah, so if you want to get even with your dad, show him his swing in slow-mo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw mine. It was heartbreaking.
This is an app?
This is an app that I've been working on, yeah.
Is it out?
It's on the Apple App Store.
What's it called?
EduFi.
Oh, he's going to love this. He just got an iPhone 5, too, so he's going to love this.
I can personally tell you that it is iPhone 5 ready. And there's also an Indiegogo for it as well.
This is... Okay, so where do I go?
It's on the iTunes App Store, and we can just link the Indiegogo in the...
Okay.
Because it's...
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, they do their URLs. It's not like a tiny URL, so let's just link it in the notes.
What are they trying to do with the Indiegogo promo? Are they trying to raise it's out, but they're still trying to raise funding?
Additional funding. Okay. Probably, the same things like servers, stuff like that. Yeah. But you can get a lot of cool stuff from it.
That's cool.
It's I'm actually had to melt down my golf clubs though, so I'm just warning you in advance.
Ouch. It could be brutal, huh?
It's a little rough to see yourself in slow-mo. I gotta be honest. It's a little bad.
Oh, No, it's never good. Never a good thing.
It's I almost fell down on the driving range, and I was like, oh god. Just to watch, and I almost hit myself. I just kind of just watch myself. It was heartbreaking.
All right, Mr. Dominic, tell people where they can find you during the week.
They can find me at blog.mdominic.com and at Dumanuku on Twitter.
Absolutely. We'll have links to our Twitter and Google Plus profiles as well in the show notes. Don't forget, Coda Radio is live Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern over at jblive.tv, and then available for downloads a few hours after that. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of Coda Radio. We'll see you right back here next week.